The sound of Marcus's laughter still echoes in my ears sometimes, even now. Not the warm, genuine laughter I fell in love with 15 years ago, but that hollow, mocking sound that filled our kitchen on the night I finally said the words I'd been rehearsing for months. I want a divorce. I'd practiced it in the shower, whispered it to my reflection in the bathroom mirror at 2 a.m. while he slept peacefully in our bed. Typed it into my phone's notes app and deleted it 100 times. 3 simple words that should have been straightforward, but felt like swallowing glass every time I tried to force them past my lips. When I finally said them, standing there by the kitchen island, with my hands gripping the cold marble countertop so hard my knuckles turned white, he didn't get angry. He didn't even look surprised. He just threw his head back and laughed. A deep, rolling laugh that seemed to come from somewhere dark and unfamiliar. Somewhere I'd never seen in him before. "You?" he said, wiping his eyes with theatrical exaggeration. "You want a divorce? That's rich, Claire. That's really fucking rich." I felt my face flush hot with humiliation and something else. Something sharper, more dangerous. Rage, maybe? Or the final death rattle of whatever love had once lived between us. "I'm serious, Marcus." "Oh, I know you're serious," he said, still grinning that awful grin. "That's what makes it so funny. You actually think you can just walk away. You actually think you have that option." The way he said it made my blood run cold. Not angry, not pleading, just certain. Like he knew something I didn't. Like he was holding cards I couldn't see. That was 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks that have unraveled my entire existence, peeled back layers of lies I never knew existed, and revealed a man I never truly knew at all. 6 weeks that have taught me more about betrayal, manipulation, and the price of my own naivety than the previous 15 years combined. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how we got here, to this moment where I'm sitting in a lawyer's office with documents spread across the desk that read like a crime novel, you need to understand how it all began. How I became the woman who didn't see the trap closing around her until it was almost too late. Marcus and I met when I was 26, fresh out of a graduate program in art history and working at a small gallery in Soho. He came in one rainy Tuesday afternoon, his expensive suit slightly damp, looking at a collection of contemporary abstract pieces with an intensity that most of our visitors didn't possess. Most people wandered through galleries like they were shopping for furniture, looking for something that matched their couch. But Marcus studied each piece like it held secrets. "What do you see?" I asked him, unable to help myself. It was a painting I particularly loved, all violent reds and deep blacks, chaos contained within clean white borders. "Rage," he said simply. "Controlled rage. The kind that's more dangerous than the explosive type because it's patient. It's waiting." I should have paid more attention to that answer. We talked for 2 hours. He bought 3 pieces, including the one we'd discussed, and asked me to dinner. I said yes because he was handsome and intelligent and seemed to see the world through the same artistic lens I did, because he listened when I talked about color theory and composition with an attention that felt rare and precious. Because when he smiled at me, I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt since my father died. The courtship was straight out of a romance novel. Dinner at restaurants I'd only read about in magazines. Weekend trips to his family's house in the Hamptons. Long conversations that stretched into the early morning hours about art and philosophy and what we wanted from life. He was 10 years older than me, already successful in commercial real estate, already moving in circles I'd only glimpsed from the outside. "You're going to change my life," he told me 3 months in. his hand cupping my face with a tenderness that made my heart ache. "I can feel it. You're going to make me better." I believed him. God, how I believed him. We were married within a year, in a ceremony at that same house in the Hamptons, under a pergola draped in white roses and fairy lights. I wore a dress that cost more than my first car. His mother cried, though I couldn't tell if they were tears of joy or something else. His father shook my hand with a grip just slightly too firm and said, "Welcome to the family. Marcus has always known what he wanted." Another thing I should have paid more attention to. The first few years were good. Better than good. Marcus was attentive, generous, supportive of my desire to eventually open my own gallery. We moved into a beautiful apartment in Tribeca with soaring ceilings and windows that flooded the space with light. He encouraged me to decorate it however I wanted, to fill it with art and beauty and life. "This is your canvas," he said, gesturing broadly at the empty space. "Make it ours." I threw myself into it. Spent months hunting through galleries and estate sales and artist studios, curating every piece, every textile, every object until our home felt like a living artwork itself. Marcus would bring clients by sometimes, and I loved watching their faces as they took in the space. Loved hearing Marcus tell them, "My wife has an incredible eye." She could have been a curator at the Met if she wanted, but as time passed, subtle things began to shift. When I mentioned wanting to volunteer at a local arts foundation, Marcus frowned and said, "Do you really have time for that? I thought you were working on plans for your gallery." When I accepted a part-time consulting position at my old gallery, he questioned whether it was worth the stress for such modest pay. When I wanted to take a weekend trip with my college roommate, he got quiet and withdrawn, and I found myself canceling to avoid the tension. "I just miss you when you're gone," he'd say, pulling me close. "Is that so wrong? I work such long hours, and I want to actually see my wife." It seemed reasonable at the time, sweet even. A successful man who just wanted to spend time with his wife. I told myself I was lucky, that most women would kill for a husband who was so devoted, so present, so unwilling to let me slip away. I didn't see the cage being built around me, bar by bar. The children conversation started around year 3. Marcus was ready. I wanted to wait a bit longer, get the gallery plans more concrete, establish my own professional identity before becoming a mother. But Marcus was persuasive. He painted pictures of our future family in such vivid detail. A little boy with my eyes, a daughter with his determination. Sunday mornings spent making pancakes and reading the paper while our children played at our feet. "We're not getting any younger," he'd say. "And I want to be a young dad, able to play catch and go hiking and really be present. Don't you want that too?" Of course I did. What kind of woman wouldn't want that? We tried for over a year with no success. The fertility treatments that followed were physically and emotionally exhausting. Marcus held my hand through the procedures, rubbed my back when the hormones made me sick, reminded me constantly that we were in this together. When we finally got pregnant, I sobbed with relief in the doctor's office while Marcus kissed my forehead and whispered, "See, I told you. Everything we want, we get, together." I miscarried at 11 weeks. The grief was overwhelming, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. Marcus was devastated too, but he channeled it differently. He threw himself into work, staying at the office later and later, traveling more frequently. I understood. Everyone processes loss differently. I tried to be patient, tried to give him space while I navigated my own sorrow. But something had changed. Some fundamental shift had occurred that I couldn't quite name. He was more distant, more critical. The things he used to find charming about me My tendency to lose track of time when looking at art, my habit of rearranging furniture at midnight when I couldn't sleep, my collection of vintage teacups, now seemed to irritate him. "Can't you just leave things alone?" he snapped one night when he came home to find I'd moved the living room around. "I'm exhausted, Claire. I don't need to come home to chaos." I apologized, moved everything back, tried to be less myself, or at least a quieter version of myself. We tried for another baby. This time, it was more clinical, less hopeful. Another pregnancy. Another miscarriage at 14 weeks. Then a third pregnancy that ended at 8 weeks. Each loss carved something out of me, left me hollow and aching and desperate to understand why my body kept failing at this one fundamental thing. "Maybe it's a sign," my mother suggested gently during one of her visits. "Maybe you and Marcus should take a break from trying. Focus on each other. Focus on your own dreams for a while." But Marcus didn't want to take a break. He wanted a family. He wanted it with an intensity that felt almost desperate, though he hid it behind concern for me. "I just want to see you happy again," he'd say. "I know having a baby would make you happy." Would it? I wasn't sure anymore. I wasn't sure what would make me happy. I felt like I'd lost myself somewhere along the way, misplaced the girl who stood in that gallery talking about controlled rage and couldn't figure out where I'd left her. We adopted Emma when she was 3 days old, a perfect, tiny miracle with a thatch of dark hair and eyes that seemed to look straight through me. Marcus cried when they placed her in his arms, real tears, not the performative kind. "Our daughter," he whispered. "Finally, our daughter." I loved her instantly and completely, a fierce, protective love that surprised me with its intensity. For the first few months, everything was consumed by her needs, her schedule, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Marcus was a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, walking her around the apartment at 3 a.m. when she wouldn't settle. "See?" he said one night, both of us exhausted and delirious from lack of sleep, but grinning at each other over Emma's bassinet. "This is what we were meant to be. A family." But as Emma grew from an infant into a toddler, the cracks that had been papered over by new baby chaos began to show again. Marcus's travel schedule intensified. He was gone 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, closing deals in other cities, meeting with investors, building his empire. When he was home, he was distracted, always on his phone, always half present. I was drowning in the isolation of new motherhood. My days blurred together in a haze of diaper changes and pureed vegetables and endless episodes of children's shows. I loved Emma with everything in me, but I felt myself disappearing. The gallery I'd dreamed of felt like a joke now. How could I possibly open a business when I could barely find time to shower? "I think I need help," I told Marcus one night after Emma was finally asleep. "Maybe a nanny, just part-time, so I could have a few hours to work on the gallery plans, or even just to remember what it feels like to be an adult." His face hardened. "A nanny? So a stranger can raise our daughter while you play artist?" "That's not fair, Marcus. I'm not playing at anything. This was always my dream." "Your dream?" he interrupted. "What about your dream of being a mother? Or does that not matter anymore now that you have what you wanted?" The argument spiraled into territory that felt dangerous and unfamiliar. He accused me of being ungrateful, of not appreciating everything he provided, of being selfish. I accused him of not understanding what it was like to be home alone all day with a toddler, of prioritizing his work over his family, of leaving me to drown while he built his career. We didn't speak for 3 days after that fight. He slept in the guest room. I cried into Emma's stuffed animals after she went to bed. And then, like always, we swept it under the rug. Pretended it hadn't happened. Went back to the performance of being a happy family. But something had broken that couldn't be fixed with silence. Emma was 2.5 when I found the first credit card statement. It was in Marcus's study, a room I rarely entered because it was his space. And I wasn't snooping, not really. I was looking for a spare phone charger and found a drawer full of papers I'd never seen before. Credit card bills for cards I didn't know existed. Thousands of dollars in charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels in cities Marcus had never mentioned visiting. Purchases that made no sense for a man with his lifestyle. A receipt for jewelry from Cartier. Not the necklace he'd given me for our anniversary. Another receipt for a weekend rental in Napa. During a week he'd supposedly been in Chicago for work. My hands shook as I rifled through the papers. There were more. So many more. Years' worth of hidden spending, hidden trips, hidden something. I confronted him that night, laid the statements across the dining room table like evidence at a trial. "What is this, Marcus? What are these?" He barely glanced at them. "Business expenses, client dinners, corporate travel. You wouldn't understand the complexities of commercial real estate." "This isn't business," I said, pointing to the Napa receipt. "You told me you were in Chicago that week. You called me from Chicago. I had a layover in California, met with a potential investor." "Jesus, Claire, do I need to account for every minute of my day now?" "Yes." The word exploded out of me. "Yes. If you're spending thousands of dollars behind my back, if you're lying about where you are." "I'm not lying," he said calmly. Too calmly. "And it's not your money I'm spending. I'm the one working 80 hours a week to pay for this apartment, for your expensive taste in art, for everything Emma needs. I think I'm entitled to spend some of what I earn without being interrogated like a criminal." The shame washed over me hot and immediate. He was right, wasn't he? I wasn't working. I was living off his income. Who was I to question how he spent money he earned? I want us to be honest with each other," I said quietly, the fight draining out of me. "I want to know what's real." "This is real," he said, gesturing around the apartment. "This family is real. But if you can't trust me, if you're going to go through my private papers and make accusations, then maybe we have bigger problems than a few credit card bills." He turned the narrative so skillfully, made me the problem, the paranoid wife who couldn't appreciate his hard work. And I let him. I apologized. Promised not to go through his things again. Tried harder to be grateful. To be the wife he needed me to be. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself lying in the dark beside him wondering, who is this man I married? And when did I stop knowing him? Emma turned 3, then 4. Marcus's absences grew longer. When he was home, he was distant, his attention always somewhere else. We barely touched anymore. Sex had become rare and perfunctory, something to check off a list, rather than an expression of intimacy. When I tried to initiate, he'd claim exhaustion or stress, then roll over and fall asleep while I lay there feeling rejected and ashamed of my own desires. I threw myself into motherhood because it was the one place I still felt competent, still felt needed. Emma was bright and curious and wildly imaginative. We spent our days painting and reading and building elaborate block castles. She'd tell me stories about magical kingdoms and brave princesses who saved themselves, and I'd think, I'm raising her to be stronger than me, to never lose herself the way I have. My mother visited for Emma's 4th birthday and pulled me aside while Marcus was on yet another work call in his study. "Claire, honey, are you okay? You look exhausted. You look hollow. I'm fine, I said automatically. Just tired. 4-year-olds are a lot of work. It's not just tired, she said gently. When's the last time you did something for yourself? Saw friends? Worked on your gallery plans? I couldn't remember. The gallery plans had been packed away in a box in the closet years ago. My friends had drifted away, or I'd pushed them away, canceling too many plans until they stopped extending invitations. Everything in my life had narrowed to this apartment, this child, this marriage that felt more like a prison with each passing day. I'm fine, I repeated, but we both knew it was a lie. The catalyst came 3 months ago, though I didn't recognize it at the time. Marcus announced he'd be gone for 2 weeks, a major deal in Dubai that required his presence. It was the longest he'd ever been away. Part of me felt relieved at the prospect of a break from the tension that had become our constant companion. Will you be okay? He asked, already distracted by his packing. Managing Emma on your own? I manage Emma on my own most of the time anyway, I said before I could stop myself. He looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I'll be fine. We'll be fine. He left the next morning with barely a kiss goodbye. Emma and I settled into a routine that felt lighter somehow without his presence. We had dance parties in the living room, made pancakes for dinner, fell asleep together on the couch watching movies. For those 2 weeks, I remembered what it felt like to breathe. Until Emma's iPad died and I grabbed Marcus's tablet to put on her favorite show. When I opened it, still logged into his email, I saw it. One message sitting at the top of his inbox, unread, the preview visible enough to make my stomach drop. Missing you already. Can't wait for next week. Your place or mine. A. My hands went numb. The tablet nearly slipped from my grip. A. Who was A? I knew I shouldn't look. Knew that opening that email was crossing a line, but my fingers were already moving, tapping the message, revealing the full text. Missing you already. Can't wait for next week. Your place or mine? The usual hotel feels too impersonal now. I want to wake up in a real bed with you, not just stolen hours. I know you said we have to be careful, but Marcus, I'm tired of being careful. I'm tired of being a secret. Think about what we talked about. If you're serious about this, about us, then we need to make a plan. I love you. A. The world tilted sideways. I sat down hard on the kitchen floor, the tablet still in my hands, reading the message again and again as if the words might rearrange themselves into something innocent. I love you. About us. A plan. How long? How fucking long had this been going on? With shaking hands, I searched through his email. Years. The messages went back years. Not continuous. Marcus was careful, regularly deleting most of their correspondence, but there were enough fragments left behind to paint a devastating picture. A was Adriana, a junior associate at his firm. 28 years old, according to her company bio. Beautiful in that effortless way some women are. All high cheekbones and glossy dark hair. She'd started at the company 5 years ago. The emails started about 6 months after that. They were careful to avoid explicit details in writing. But the subtext was clear. This wasn't just physical. This was a relationship. They took trips together. Those mysterious charges finally making sense. They had inside jokes. They made plans for a future that apparently didn't include me. One email from 2 years ago, just after my 3rd miscarriage. I know this is hard, Marcus, but maybe it's for the best. When you're finally free, we can start fresh. Build the family we want together. When you're finally free. He'd been planning to leave me. For years, he'd been planning to leave me. But he hadn't. Why? What was stopping him? I spent those 2 weeks in a fog, going through the motions with Emma, while my mind spun in circles. I wanted to confront him immediately, to scream and throw things and demand answers. But something held me back. Some instinct that told me I needed to be smart about this, that there was more to uncover. I hired a private investigator. His name was David Chen, recommended by a woman in an online support group for infidelity I'd found at 3 a.m. one sleepless night. David was professional and kind, and didn't make me feel pathetic for wanting evidence of something I already knew was true. Most women have instincts about these things, he told me during our first meeting at a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. The question isn't whether it's happening. The question is what you want to do with the information once you have it. What did I want? At that moment, I wanted to disappear. To take Emma and vanish into a life where I'd never met Marcus, never believed his lies, never slowly given up pieces of myself until there was almost nothing left. But that wasn't an option. So instead, I asked David to find everything, document everything, build a case that couldn't be denied or explained away. Marcus came back from Dubai with gifts, a beautiful scarf for me, a stuffed camel for Emma. He seemed lighter somehow, almost happy. Now I knew why. He'd spent 2 weeks with Adriana in luxury hotels, playing house, pretending I didn't exist. I missed you girls, he said, scooping Emma into a hug. She squealed with delight, thrilled to have her daddy home. Over her head, his eyes met mine. Did you miss me? Every day. I lied. We fell back into our routine. He went to work. I took care of Emma. We had dinners where we barely spoke. We slept in the same bed with a continent of space between us. And all the while, David Chen was working in the background, taking photos, tracking movements, building my exit strategy. 3 weeks later, David sent me his report. It was worse than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for 4.5 years. Marcus had bought Adriana an apartment in Brooklyn, paid for by one of his many hidden accounts. They spent 2 or 3 nights a week together there, sometimes more when he was supposedly traveling for work. He'd given her jewelry, paid for her vacations, even covered her student loans. There's more, David said when we met to discuss his findings. I found something strange in his financial records. Multiple accounts you probably don't know about. Significant assets being moved around. Money being funneled through various LLCs. I'm not a forensic accountant, but something's not right here. I think you need to talk to a divorce attorney before you confront him. Make sure your own interests are protected. My own interests? I'd lost track of what those even were. I called a lawyer David recommended. Her name was Patricia Holloway, and she had a reputation for handling high-asset divorces with surgical precision. When I walked into her office with David's report and the fragments of financial information I'd managed to gather, her expression grew increasingly grave. Mrs. Ashford, she said after reviewing everything, I need to be straight with you. This is going to be complicated. Your husband has been systematically hiding assets for years. What looks like it should be a straightforward division of marital property is actually a forensic accounting nightmare. We're going to need subpoenas, possibly forensic auditors, definitely more time than a typical divorce. How much time? Months. Maybe longer. And it's going to get ugly. Men like your husband don't react well to losing control. I don't care, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. I want out. I want Emma protected, and I want what's fair. Patricia nodded. Then we need to be strategic. Don't confront him yet. Let me start pulling records, building our case. The element of surprise is crucial here. If he knows you're planning to leave, he could move assets, destroy evidence, make this even harder. So I waited, and I planned. and I tried to act normal while every day felt like walking on a tightrope over an abyss. I made one mistake during those weeks. I became fixated on Adriana, on understanding who this woman was who'd been sleeping with my husband for nearly 5 years. I found her Instagram, public, full of carefully curated images of a life that looked enviable and carefree. Brunch with friends, beach vacations, artful photos of her apartment, the apartment Marcus bought her. In some photos, I could see traces of him. A man's watch on her nightstand. A glimpse of a masculine silhouette in a reflection. Once, a photo of 2 coffee cups with the caption, "Perfect Sunday Mornings," that was posted during a weekend Marcus told me he was at a conference in Boston. She'd liked one of his company's Instagram posts 2 days ago, a professional photo of Marcus at some industry event, looking handsome and successful, and nothing like the man who barely looked at me anymore. Her comment, "Congratulations on the award. So well deserved." In public, they played strangers. In private, they were building a life that was supposed to be mine. The rage that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over. I needed to confront him. Patricia's strategy be damned. I couldn't keep living this lie, sleeping next to this man who'd betrayed me so thoroughly, pretending everything was fine when my entire world was burning. That's how we ended up in the kitchen on that Tuesday night 6 weeks ago. Emma was asleep. The apartment was quiet. Marcus was making himself a drink, expensive scotch in a crystal tumbler, the picture of a successful man relaxing in his beautiful home, and I said those 3 words that changed everything. I want a divorce. The laughter stopped eventually. Marcus set his drink down carefully, precisely, and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not quite anger, something colder, more calculated. "Okay," he said slowly. "Let's talk about divorce. Do you have any idea what that means, Claire? What that would look like for you?" "It means I leave. We separate our lives. We co-parent Emma. It's pretty straightforward." He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. "Straightforward. Right. Let's walk through this straightforward scenario, shall we? You leave. Where do you go? You have no job, no income, no prospects. You haven't worked in years. Do you think you're going to maintain this lifestyle on your own? I'll get spousal support, child support. We'll divide the assets." "Assets?" He laughed again, shorter this time. "What assets, Claire? This apartment? It's a corporate rental through one of my companies. Technically, you don't own any part of it. Your car? Leased through the company. Those paintings you love so much? Most of them belong to an LLC I set up for tax purposes. Even Emma's college fund? You'd be surprised where that money actually is and whose name is on it." My stomach dropped. "That's not... You can't..." "Can't what? Structure my finances legally to protect my interests?" "I absolutely can. I have been. For years." He took a sip of his scotch, watching me over the rim of the glass. "Here's what happens if you want a divorce, Claire. You get a modest monthly stipend, probably less than you think, because my actual income is quite a bit lower than what you imagine when you factor in all the legal deductions and business expenses I carry. You get to see Emma maybe 50% of the time, if you're lucky. And you get to figure out how to rebuild a life from nothing at 41 years old with no career and a massive gap in your resume. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to help you be realistic." He set his glass down and moved closer, his voice softening into something that might have been kindness if I didn't know better. "Look, I get it. We've had a rough few years. The miscarriages, the stress, the adjustment to parenthood. It's been hard on both of us. But divorce isn't the answer. It would destroy Emma. She needs both her parents, together, in a stable home. She needs normalcy." "This isn't normalcy," I said quietly. This is me slowly dying inside while you pretend everything is fine. So dramatic. He shook his head. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You've always been overly emotional, letting feelings cloud your judgment. We have a good life, Claire. A beautiful daughter, financial security, respect in our community. Why would you throw that away because you're going through some kind of midlife crisis? The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced. For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed him, almost convinced myself I was being irrational, ungrateful, selfish. But then I thought about those emails, about Adriana, about the years of lies. I know, I said. He went very still. You know what? I know about her, about Adriana, about all of it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. A sharpening, a recalibration. You've been snooping, he said finally. You've been lying. How long have you known? Long enough. Does it matter? He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him thinking, strategizing, deciding how to play this. Adriana is a colleague, he said carefully. If you saw some emails that seemed inappropriate, don't. My voice cracked. Don't insult me by pretending this is anything less than what it is. 4.5 years, Marcus. You've been with her for 4.5 years. You bought her an apartment. You told her you loved her. You made plans for a future with her. Who've you been talking to? His voice sharpened with something dangerous. Did you hire someone? A private investigator? Jesus Christ, Claire. Do you understand how that looks? How paranoid and unhinged that makes you seem? How it looks! I felt hysterical laughter bubbling up. You're worried about how I look? You've been cheating on me for nearly 5 years, and you're concerned about optics? Keep your voice down. Emma's sleeping. Fuck Emma's sleep. Fuck this apartment. Fuck all of it. I was yelling now, months of suppressed rage finally erupting. You made me think I was crazy. You made me feel guilty for wanting anything for myself. You convinced me I was ungrateful and selfish and lucky to have you. All while you were building an entire separate life with someone else? Are you finished? He asked coldly. No, I'm not finished. I want to know why. If you wanted out, if you wanted her, why didn't you just leave? Why string me along for years? Because I'm not a fool, he said flatly. Because divorce is expensive and messy and bad for business. Because despite what you think, I do care about Emma having a stable home. Because maybe I thought we could work it out, that you'd snap out of whatever funk you've been in and remember how to be the woman I married. The woman you married? I felt tears hot on my cheeks now. You destroyed that woman. You systematically took her apart piece by piece until there was nothing left. And now you want to what? Keep me around as a placeholder while you live your real life with her? I want to keep our family intact, he said. I want Emma to grow up in a 2-parent household. I want to avoid the disaster that divorce would be for both of us. And yes, I want you to accept that marriages aren't fairy tales. People have needs that one person can't always meet. Adults find ways to handle that maturely. Maturely? I laughed bitterly. You want me to accept your affair maturely. I want you to be realistic about your options. You can walk away with pennies and start over from nothing, fighting me in court for years while lawyers drain whatever's left. Or you can stay, enjoy the life we've built, focus on raising our daughter, and stop asking questions about things that don't concern you. The cruelty of it took my breath away. The calculated coldness, the absolute certainty that he held all the cards, and I had no choice but to accept whatever terms he offered. Get out, I whispered. This is my home. Get out of this room. Go sleep somewhere else. I can't look at you right now. He shrugged, picked up his scotch, and walked away. At the door, he paused and looked back. You should think very carefully about your next move, Claire. For Emma's sake. And for your own. After he left, I slid down the kitchen cabinet onto the floor and cried until I had nothing left. Cried for the girl I'd been. Cried for the marriage I'd believed in. Cried for the years I'd wasted. Cried for my daughter, who was going to grow up watching her parents destroy each other. But underneath the tears, something else was growing. Something harder and sharper. Determination. Rage. A refusal to let him win. If Marcus thought he could threaten and manipulate me into staying, he didn't know me at all. Or maybe he'd forgotten that controlled rage he'd once identified in that painting. The kind that's more dangerous because it's patient. It was time to show him exactly how patient I could be. The next morning, I called Patricia Holloway and told her everything. About the confrontation, about Marcus's threats, about his claims that I'd end up with nothing. Is he right? I asked. Can he really do that? Can he structure everything so I'm left with nothing? He can try, Patricia said grimly. And from what you're describing, he's done a good job of hiding and protecting assets. But here's the thing. Judges don't like it when people try to screw over their spouses. If we can prove he's been systematically hiding marital assets, if we can demonstrate the affair, if we can show a pattern of financial manipulation, we can make a case for a much more favorable settlement. How long will that take? Months, probably. We'll need to subpoena records, depose witnesses, possibly hire forensic accountants. It's going to be expensive and exhausting and ugly. You need to be prepared for that. What if I can't afford it? The expensive attorneys, the accountants, all of it? There are ways to get the court to order your husband to pay your legal fees, given the disparity in your incomes and his obvious attempts to hide assets. But we'll have to be strategic. I felt a headache building behind my eyes. What should I do right now? Today? Document everything. Photograph any financial papers you can access. Screenshot anything digital. Keep a journal of his movements, his behavior, any threats he makes. We need to build a timeline and a pattern. And under no circumstances should you leave the marital home. I know it's hard to stay, but possession matters in these cases. So I stayed. I documented. I played the role of dutiful wife while collecting evidence of my husband's betrayal, like a detective building a case. Marcus and I existed in a state of Cold War, barely speaking, moving around each other like chess pieces. He grew increasingly suspicious. I'd catch him watching me sometimes with that calculating look. He changed the passwords on all his devices, started keeping his laptop and phone with him at all times, even taking them into the bathroom. He was erasing evidence, I knew, but hopefully not fast enough. Emma sensed the tension. She grew clingy and anxious, asking repeatedly if Mommy and Daddy were okay. I hated lying to her, hated exposing her to this toxic atmosphere. But Patricia was right. Leaving now would put me at a serious disadvantage. Just a little stress at work, baby, I'd tell her, holding her close. Everything's going to be okay. But I didn't know if that was true. Some nights, lying in the guest room I'd moved into, I'd think about Marcus's threat. About starting over at 41 with nothing. About fighting a man with unlimited resources and a willingness to destroy me if I didn't comply. Terror would grip me then, make it hard to breathe. What was I doing? Who did I think I was, challenging someone with so much more power? But then, I'd remember those emails. About us. A plan. I love you. I'd remember the years of manipulation, the slow erosion of my self-worth, the cage he'd built around me while calling it love. and the fear would transmute into something else, something fiercer. I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to accept his terms. I was going to fight, even if the odds were stacked against me. 3 weeks into our Cold War, I got a call from David Chen. "I've been doing some more digging," he said, "looking into your husband's business dealings. There's something weird happening with his company's finances. Transactions that don't quite add up, money moving through shell companies in ways that seem designed to obscure its origin and destination. I really think you need a forensic accountant to look at this." Patricia recommended someone, a woman named Sarah Kwan, who'd built her career untangling complex financial schemes in divorce cases. She was expensive, but Patricia thought she could get the court to order Marcus to pay for her services, given the complexity of his financial structure. "Mrs. Ashford," Sarah said when we first met, after I'd handed over every scrap of financial information I'd managed to gather, "I'm going to be honest with you. What I'm seeing here suggests possible fraud, tax evasion, maybe more. This goes beyond hiding assets in a divorce. If what I suspect is true, your husband could be facing serious legal consequences beyond your marital issues." My stomach clenched. "What kind of consequences?" "Criminal ones, potentially, but I don't want to speculate until I've done a thorough analysis. Give me a few weeks with these documents and access to whatever we can subpoena. I'll piece together what's really happening here." A few weeks? Could I survive a few more weeks in that apartment? Living with a man I no longer knew, pretending for Emma's sake that everything was normal? I had to. I had no choice. Marcus was careful around me now, his threats replaced by cold civility. We communicated through brief texts about Emma's schedule, about household matters, never anything personal. When we were forced to be in the same room, he'd look through me as if I wasn't there. The psychological warfare was working. I felt myself fraying at the edges, struggling to maintain any sense of normal routine. I'd find myself staring into space for minutes at a time, losing track of conversations, forgetting simple tasks. Emma would call my name 3 times before I'd hear her. "Mommy's just tired," I'd tell her, forcing a smile. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm listening now." But I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold it together. Salvation came from an unexpected source. Patricia called me 4 weeks after our Cold War began, excitement in her voice. "We got the subpoena approved. Marcus's accountant has been ordered to turn over 5 years of financial records, personal and business. He has 10 days to comply." "Will he, though? Comply?" "He has to. It's a court order. And Claire, there's more. I put some pressure on the court regarding interim support. Given the disparity in your incomes and his control over all marital funds, the judge agreed you needed immediate access to money. He's ordered Marcus to pay you temporary spousal support starting immediately, $8,000 a month." I nearly dropped the phone. $8,000. It was more money than I'd had direct access to in years. Marcus controlled all our accounts, giving me a credit card with a limit he could monitor and question. This was different. This was mine. "How did he take it?" I asked. Patricia's voice darkened. "Not well. He's filed motions to challenge both orders, claims the support amount is excessive, argues the subpoena is a fishing expedition. But those motions will take time to resolve, and in the meantime, the orders stand. He has to comply." When I got home that evening, Marcus was waiting for me in the living room. Emma was at her grandmother's. His mother had taken her for a sleepover, some attempt at maintaining normalcy for her. "You want to play hardball?" he said without preamble. "Fine, we'll play hardball. But you need to understand something, Claire. I have resources you can't imagine. I have attorneys who will bury you in paperwork. I have connections in this city that you don't. You're making a mistake." The only mistake I made was staying as long as I did. His jaw clenched. That support order? That's chump change compared to what you're used to. You think you can maintain your lifestyle on $8,000 a month? Wait until you're paying for your own apartment, your own food, your own everything. Wait until you realize what life actually costs. At least it'll be my life, not some performance for your benefit. You're going to regret this. When you're sitting in some tiny apartment in a bad neighborhood, struggling to make ends meet, you're going to look back on this moment and regret it. Maybe, I said quietly, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or a grudging respect. You're not the woman I married, he said finally. No, I agreed. I'm not. She died slowly over 15 years. You killed her. The documents arrived from Marcus's accountant exactly 10 days later, delivered to Patricia's office in multiple boxes. Sarah Kwan spent a week poring over them, making notes, cross-referencing, building spreadsheets that tracked money through a maze of accounts and companies. When she called to discuss her findings, her voice was carefully controlled, professional. But I could hear the undercurrent of something else. Shock, maybe, or anger. Mrs. Ashford, I need you to come to the office. It's complicated, and you need to see it to understand what's been happening. I went that afternoon, my hands shaking as I walked into Patricia's conference room where Sarah had set up what looked like a detective's investigation board. Papers, charts, timelines, all color-coded and connected with lines that traced money through a bewildering array of accounts. Okay, Sarah said, taking a breath. Let me walk you through this. Your husband has been running what amounts to a shell game with marital assets for at least 7 years. Possibly longer. On paper, his company is moderately successful, but not extraordinarily profitable. In reality, he's been systematically funneling money through various LLCs and offshore accounts, significantly reducing his reported income while actually accumulating substantial wealth. She pointed to a chart showing money flowing through company after company. Real estate deals are structured, so profits go to companies he controls but aren't reported as personal income. He's been using corporate credit cards for personal expenses, writing them off as business costs. He's got accounts in the Cayman Islands that receive consulting fees from his various companies, consulting fees he pays himself. My head spun trying to follow it all. Is that legal? Some of it exists in a gray area. Some of it is definitely tax evasion. But here's where it gets really interesting. She pointed to another section of her board. About 4.5 years ago, the same time his affair with Adriana started, there's a significant shift in how money is being moved. He opens several new accounts, creates new LLCs, starts transferring assets in ways specifically designed to remove them from the marital estate. He was planning this, Patricia said quietly. Planning to divorce you eventually and making sure you'd get as little as possible when he did. But he didn't divorce you, Sarah continued. Why? Because he realized that the longer he waited, the more he could move assets into protected structures. But there's something else. She pulled out a different set of documents. I found payments to Adriana that go beyond just the apartment. Significant sums, paid through various channels, gifts, cash transfers, loan payments. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 4 years. He was supporting her completely, I said numbly. More than that, he was investing in her. There's even money going toward a business she recently started, a boutique consulting firm. Want to guess who her only client is? One of Marcus's companies. Exactly. He's funneling money to her through fake consulting fees. And here's the kicker. Those fees are reported as business expenses, reducing his taxable income. He's essentially using marital assets to fund his mistress's lifestyle while lowering his support obligations to you all while committing tax fraud. I felt dizzy. How much? In total, how much are we talking about? Sarah and Patricia exchanged a look. Based on what I can trace, Sarah said carefully, your husband's actual net worth is somewhere around $15 million, possibly more if there are assets I haven't uncovered yet. But his reported income and visible assets would suggest he's worth maybe $2-3 million. $15 million? The number didn't feel real. And growing. His real estate investments are quite sound, actually. He's very good at what he does. He's just also very good at hiding what he does. Patricia leaned forward. Claire, this changes everything. This isn't just about a divorce settlement anymore. This is about potential criminal activity. Tax fraud, definitely. Possibly wire fraud and other charges. We need to decide how to proceed. What are my options? Option 1. We use this information purely in the divorce proceedings. We show the judge that your husband has been hiding massive assets and demand a much larger settlement based on his actual wealth. He'll fight it, but we have strong evidence. And option 2? We report this to the IRS and potentially other authorities. If they investigate and find what we've found, your husband could face serious criminal charges, prison time even. The room fell silent. I thought about Marcus, about the years of lies and manipulation, about his threats and his cruelty. Part of me wanted to see him suffer, wanted him to face real consequences for everything he'd done. But another part of me, the part that was tired and scared and just wanted this to be over, wondered if I really wanted to go that far. Did I want Emma's father to potentially go to prison? Did I want the scandal, the public spectacle? The years of legal battles that would come with criminal charges? I need time to think about this, I said finally. That's fair, Patricia said. But Claire, you should know that if we don't report this, and it comes out later that we knew about potential criminal activity, and didn't disclose it, there could be consequences for us too. I'm ethically obligated to advise you that crimes have likely been committed. How much time do I have to decide? Not much. I need to respond to Marcus's motions by the end of next week. Whatever strategy we choose, we need to commit to it. I left that meeting feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world. $15 million. Years of fraud. A decision that could destroy Marcus or could give me the power to negotiate a real settlement. That night, I lay in the guest room and thought about the girl I'd been at 26, walking into that gallery and seeing a man studying a painting of controlled rage. If I could go back and warn her, what would I say? Run? Protect yourself? Demand prenups and separate accounts and never, ever lose yourself? Or would none of it matter? Would she fall for his charm anyway? Believe his promises? Make the same choices that led here? I'd probably never know. All I knew was that I had to make a choice now, with the information I had, for the life I wanted going forward. I thought about Emma, asleep in her room, innocent and untouched by all this ugliness. What did I want her to learn from this? That you should stay silent when someone betrays you? That you should accept whatever scraps they offer to avoid conflict? Or that sometimes, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, you stand up for yourself and demand what's right? By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Patricia first thing. Option 1, I said. We use it in the divorce. I don't want to send Emma's father to prison if I can avoid it, but I want every penny I'm entitled to. I want him to understand that his threats and manipulations don't work anymore. I want him to know I'm not afraid. Are you sure? Patricia asked. Because once we file motions revealing what we know, there's no going back. And Claire? He's going to be furious. You need to be prepared for that. I'm prepared, but I wasn't. Not really. Nothing could have prepared me for Marcus's reaction when Patricia filed motions the following week, revealing the evidence we'd gathered, and demanding a complete financial disclosure based on his actual wealth, not his reported income. I was making dinner when he came home early, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. Emma was at the table coloring, humming to herself, oblivious. "Emma, sweetheart, go to your room for a bit," Marcus said, his voice tight. She looked up, confused. "But I'm not done." "Now, Emma." Something in his tone made her scramble from her chair and run to her room. I heard her door close, and then we were alone. "You want to destroy me?" Marcus said quietly. Too quietly. "You're actually trying to destroy me." "I'm trying to get what I'm entitled to." "Entitled? You're entitled to nothing. Everything I built before you or despite you. You contributed nothing except spending money and complaining. I gave up my career for you. I raised your daughter. I built the home you were so eager to show off to your clients. I stood by you through everything, and you repaid me with lies and betrayal." He took a step closer, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt physically afraid of him. There was something unhinged in his eyes, something I'd never seen before. "You think you're so smart," he hissed. "You and your lawyers, thinking you've figured everything out. You have no idea what you're dealing with, no idea what I'm capable of." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. Back off. Drop this. We'll negotiate something reasonable. But if you keep pushing, if you keep trying to expose my business dealings, you're going to regret it." "Is that a threat?" I repeated, louder this time. "It's a promise. You're poking a bear, Claire. And when it bites back, don't say I didn't warn you." He grabbed his keys and left, the door slamming behind him so hard the walls shook. Emma emerged from her room, tears streaming down her face. "Why is Daddy so mad? Why are you fighting?" I pulled her into my arms, her small body shaking with sobs, and I felt the full weight of what I was putting her through. But I also knew, deep in my bones, that this temporary pain was better than letting her grow up watching her mother be slowly destroyed by someone who was supposed to love her. "Sometimes adults have disagreements," I told her softly. "But Daddy and I both love you so much. That will never change, okay?" She nodded against my chest, but I could feel her fear. Her confusion, her sense that her world was falling apart, because it was. For all of us. Over the next few days, Marcus's behavior became increasingly erratic. He'd come home at odd hours, sometimes not at all. When he was there, he'd sit in his study for hours, on the phone in hushed, angry conversations. I'd hear snippets. "Handle it. Make it go away. Whatever it costs." He was scrambling, I realized, trying to hide more evidence, move more money, shore up his defenses against the siege I'd begun. Patricia filed for an emergency hearing, citing Marcus's suspicious financial activity and requesting that the court freeze all assets pending a full accounting. The judge agreed, issuing an order that prohibited either of us from moving any significant assets until the divorce was resolved. When Marcus found out, he punched a hole in our living room wall. I grabbed Emma and locked us in my room until he left. That night, I called Patricia in tears. "I can't stay here," I said. "It's not safe anymore. I need to leave." "If you leave now," he could argue abandonment, "could hurt your custody case." "I don't care. Emma is terrified. I'm terrified. We need out." Patricia was silent for a moment. "Okay, here's what we do. We file for a temporary restraining order based on his violent behavior. We document the damage to the wall, your fear for your safety. We ask the judge to order him to leave the marital home while the divorce is pending. That way you're not abandoning anything. You're being protected." "Will that work?" "It should, especially given his behavior. Can you document anything? Photos, Witnesses? I took photos of the hole in the wall. I had Emma's teacher write a statement about how distressed and anxious she'd seemed lately. I detailed every threat, every moment I'd felt afraid, every incident that had made me question my safety. It was enough. The judge granted a temporary restraining order and ordered Marcus to leave the apartment immediately. He could have supervised visits with Emma, but otherwise needed to stay away from both of us. The day he moved out was surreal. He came with a police escort to collect his belongings, moving through the apartment like a stranger, taking only what was his. He didn't speak to me, didn't even look at me. But as he was leaving, he paused at the door. "This isn't over," he said quietly so the police wouldn't hear. Not even close. Then he was gone. And Emma and I were alone in the apartment that suddenly felt both emptier and safer. The next 2 months were a blur of depositions, hearings, document reviews, and mounting legal bills. The court appointed its own forensic accountant to independently verify Sarah's findings. Marcus's lawyers fought everything, every subpoena, every request, every piece of evidence. But slowly, inevitably, the truth emerged. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the money funneled to Adriana, the systematic hiding of assets, all of it laid bare in court documents and testimony. Marcus's accountant was the one who finally broke. His name was Robert Chen, no relation to David, ironically, and he'd been Marcus's accountant for over a decade. He was the one who'd structured all the deals, created the shell companies, filed the fraudulent tax returns. Patricia deposed him, and I watched via video link as she methodically dismantled his defenses. She showed him document after document, asked him question after question about transactions that made no sense, about payments that couldn't be explained, about income that disappeared into offshore accounts. "Mr. Chen?" she said at one point. "You're a CPA. You understand the tax code. You know that what you've described here, the way these transactions were structured, the way income was hidden, the way deductions were claimed, you know that's illegal, don't you?" Robert Chen looked pale, defeated. "I need to speak to my own attorney." "That's your right, but I want to be clear about something. My client's divorce proceedings are civil matters, but tax fraud, wire fraud, the things we're discussing here, those are criminal matters. If you're concerned about your own liability, you might want to consider cooperating fully with this court, rather than protecting someone who's likely going to throw you under the bus the moment it benefits him." The deposition ended shortly after, but the damage was done. Robert Chen knew he was in serious trouble, and Marcus knew his carefully constructed empire of lies was crumbling. 2 days later, Patricia got a call from Marcus's lawyer. They wanted to negotiate a settlement. "He's scared," Patricia told me. "His accountant is probably going to flip, cooperate with authorities to reduce his own liability. Marcus knows that once that happens, everything comes out. He wants to settle this before it gets worse." "What's he offering?" $4 million, plus child support and the apartment for you and Emma until she's 18. $4 million. A month ago, it would have seemed like an impossibly huge amount. But now, knowing he was actually worth $15 million or more, knowing how much he'd hidden and lied about, it felt insulting. "No," I said. "Claire, I need you to think carefully about this. $4 million is a significant amount of money. It would set you up for life, let you open that gallery you always wanted, give Emma every advantage, and it would end this fight now, let you move on with your life. He stole years from me. He hid his money while making me feel like I was worthless, like I contributed nothing. He threatened me, tried to intimidate me, did everything he could to keep me trapped. And now, He wants to buy his way out for less than a third of what he's actually worth? If we keep fighting, it could take years. It could cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees, and we might not get much more than what he's offering now. Or we might, and either way, he needs to know he can't control me anymore. Patricia sighed. Okay, I'll tell them no, but Claire, be prepared for this to get uglier. He's not going to take rejection well. She was right. Marcus's next move was to file for full custody of Emma, claiming I was mentally unstable, a bad mother, that I'd alienated him from his daughter, and was using her as a weapon in the divorce. The accusation gutted me. Whatever else Marcus had done, I'd never tried to turn Emma against him. I'd bent over backward to maintain his relationship with her, to make sure she knew he loved her even as our marriage fell apart. But he was strategic about it. He found witnesses, his mother, his business partner, even our old nanny from when Emma was a baby, who testified that I'd always been emotional, unstable, difficult. He had a psychologist evaluate me and Emma, cherry-picking someone he knew would be sympathetic to his narrative. It's all bullshit, Patricia assured me. Standard divorce warfare, especially in high-asset cases. We'll get our own psychologist, our own witnesses. We'll show the truth. But it didn't feel like bullshit. It felt like my worst fears manifesting, that I would lose Emma, that Marcus would find a way to take the one good thing left in my life. I barely slept during those weeks. Every interaction with Emma felt fraught, like I was being watched and judged. Was I too anxious, too protective, not structured enough? I second-guessed everything, terrified of giving Marcus any ammunition. The court-appointed psychologist who evaluated us both was a woman named Dr. Lisa Martinez. She spent hours with me, with Emma, with Marcus, observing our interactions, conducting interviews, reviewing documents. Just be yourself, Patricia advised. Be honest. Show her who you really are. But who was I, really? After 15 years of being told I was too emotional, too dramatic, too unstable, after years of gaslighting and manipulation, I wasn't sure I knew anymore. Dr. Martinez submitted her report 3 weeks later. I was terrified to read it, convinced it would echo Marcus's claims that his lawyers and money and influence would have poisoned even an objective professional. But I was wrong. In my professional opinion, Dr. Martinez wrote, Emma is a happy, well-adjusted child who has a strong, healthy bond with her mother. Claire Ashford demonstrates appropriate parenting skills, emotional attunement with her child, and a clear commitment to Emma's well-being. While the marital conflict has understandably created some stress in the household, I see no evidence of instability, alienation, or inappropriate behavior on Ms. Ashford's part. Conversely, Marcus Ashford's interactions with Emma, while affectionate, seem performative and focused primarily on his own image as a father, rather than genuine attunement to his daughter's needs. His allegations against Ms. Ashford appear to be strategic rather than based in legitimate concern for Emma's welfare. I see no reason why Ms. Ashford should not continue as Emma's primary custodial parent. I sobbed reading it. Great, gasping sobs of relief and vindication. Someone objective, someone with expertise, had looked at me and seen the truth. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I was just a mother trying to protect her daughter and herself from a man who'd spent years destroying both. Marcus's custody bid fell apart after that. His lawyers quietly withdrew the motion, probably realizing it made him look vindictive and petty. But the damage lingered, the knowledge that he'd tried to take Emma from me, that he was willing to use our daughter as a weapon. Any sympathy I might have felt for him evaporated completely. 5 months into the divorce proceedings, Robert Chen cut a deal, facing his own potential criminal charges for his role in Marcus's financial schemes. He agreed to cooperate fully with investigators in exchange for immunity. He turned over documents, explained transactions, provided passwords to accounts no one else knew existed. The picture that emerged was even worse than what Sarah had initially uncovered. Marcus hadn't just hidden money. He'd been systematically committing tax fraud for over a decade. The IRS opened an investigation. So did the New York State Department of Taxation. Suddenly, Marcus wasn't just fighting a divorce. He was fighting for his freedom. His settlement offers increased dramatically. $5 million, then $6 million, then $7 million, plus full support for Emma, plus the apartment, plus guarantees that he'd cover her college education and more. He's desperate, Patricia said. He knows that if this goes to trial, everything comes out in public record. The fraud, the affair, all of it. It destroys his reputation, his business, potentially his liberty. He wants this sealed and settled before that happens. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think you should take it. $7 million is a life-changing amount of money. With what you've been through, what you've survived, you deserve to start fresh with real security. $7 million. The number still didn't feel real. But I thought about what it meant. True independence, the ability to open my gallery finally, to give Emma every opportunity, to never have to depend on Marcus or anyone else again. Okay, I said. But I want one more thing. What's that? A clause that prohibits him from disparaging me publicly or privately. I want it in writing that he can never tell anyone I was unstable or crazy or any of the things he's claimed. That if he does, the entire settlement is void and we go back to court with everything exposed. Patricia smiled. I think we can make that happen. The final settlement was signed 6 months to the day after I'd asked for the divorce. $7 million, paid out over 3 years for tax purposes. Full custody of Emma with Marcus getting standard visitation. The apartment was mine until Emma turned 18, at which point it would be sold and proceeds split. Marcus would pay child support of $5,000 monthly until Emma was 18, plus cover all educational and medical expenses. And crucially, he was prohibited from making any negative statements about me in any context ever. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue criminal charges related to his financial schemes. And all divorce proceedings would be sealed to protect both our privacy. It was, by any objective measure, an excellent settlement. I'd won. I'd gotten out with my daughter, with financial security, with my dignity intact. So why did I feel so hollow? The first year after the divorce was finalized was strange. I was free, truly free for the first time in 15 years, but I didn't quite know what to do with that freedom. I'd spent so long defining myself in relation to Marcus, as his wife, as the wronged party, as the woman fighting for her liberation, that I'd lost track of who I was without all that. Emma adjusted better than I'd feared. She saw Marcus every other weekend, and he was, I had to admit, a decent father when he wasn't trying to use her as leverage against me. Their visits were fun and activity-packed. Trips to amusement parks, museums, special dinners. He was trying, in his own way, to rebuild a relationship that had been damaged by our conflict. I couldn't bring myself to hate him for that. Whatever he'd done to me, Emma deserved a father who loved her. For myself, I threw myself into starting my gallery. I'd been dreaming of it for so long that actually doing it felt surreal. I found a small space in Chelsea, spent months renovating it to my exact specifications, curating a collection of emerging artists whose work moved me. I called it Controlled Rage, a homage to that painting I'd discussed with Marcus 15 years ago when I'd been too young to understand what I was really looking at. The opening was packed. Friends I hadn't seen in years, artists I admired, even my mother who flew in for the event. People wandered through, studying the pieces, discussing the themes, and I stood there thinking, I did this, Despite everything, I built this. My mother pulled me aside at one point, champagne glass in hand, tears in her eyes. I'm so proud of you, Claire. Look what you've done. Look who you've become. I almost didn't make it here, I admitted. There were so many times I wanted to give up. But you didn't. That's what matters. You fought for yourself. You fought for Emma. You survived. Survived. Was that what I'd done? It seemed like such a low bar, mere survival. But maybe that was enough. Maybe survival was its own kind of victory. I'd been at the gallery about 6 months when I got an unexpected visitor. Adriana. She walked in wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry, gifts from Marcus, probably, and stood awkwardly in the center of the space, looking at the art without really seeing it. I'm sorry, she said when I approached. I know I shouldn't be here. I wanted to see what you built. Marcus talks about you sometimes, about the gallery. He sounds proud, in a weird way. I didn't know what to say to that. Why are you really here, Adriana? She bit her lip. I left him 3 months ago, moved out of the apartment he bought me, ended everything. I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't do what? Be the other woman, be the secret, be the person he turned to when his real life got hard. I thought. She laughed bitterly. I thought once you were gone, once he was free, we'd have something real. But it was never real. I was just another piece in whatever game he was playing with himself. I felt an unexpected surge of empathy for her. She'd been young when they'd started, only 23, barely older than Emma is now, and Marcus was practiced at making women feel special, chosen, essential to his happiness. Did he tell you about me? I asked. About our marriage? About what was really happening? He said you were unhappy, that you'd grown apart, that you wanted different things. She met my eyes. I didn't know about the financial stuff, the fraud, the way he'd set everything up to trap you. I swear, if I'd known, would it have changed anything? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe not. I loved him. Or I thought I did. It's hard to tell the difference between love and whatever it is he makes you feel. Yes, I said softly. Yes, it is. She left a few minutes later, and I never saw her again. But I thought about that conversation often, about how many women Marcus had probably deceived over the years, how many of us had fallen for the same act, believed the same lies. I'd wanted to hate her. Part of me still did. But a larger part recognized that we were just different victims of the same man. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I got a call from Patricia. Claire, I thought you should know. Marcus was indicted. The IRS investigation finally caught up with him. Tax evasion, wire fraud, several other charges. His trial is set for next year. My stomach dropped. Will I have to testify? Probably. Your divorce proceedings are sealed, but the financial evidence we uncovered is relevant to their case. They can subpoena you. I testified 8 months later, in a federal courthouse in Manhattan. Marcus sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking older than I remembered, his face drawn and tired. He didn't look at me as I was sworn in, didn't look at me as I answered questions about our finances, our marriage, what I'd discovered. I told the truth, simply and clearly. No embellishment, no revenge, just the facts of what had happened. When I was done, as I stood to leave, Marcus finally looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not calculation, just defeat. The crushing weight of consequences finally catching up. He was convicted on most counts and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Emma cried when I told her, even though she was old enough now to understand what he'd done. He's still my dad, she sobbed. I know he made mistakes, but he's still my dad. I know, baby, I said, holding her. And you're allowed to love him. You're allowed to be sad. None of this changes that he's your father. Marcus served 3 years before being released on parole. By then, Emma was 13, navigating middle school and adolescence with the added complexity of having a father who'd been in prison. She saw him regularly once he was out, and I encouraged it, even when it was hard. You're more generous than I'd be, my mother said once. It's not about generosity, I told her. It's about Emma. She deserves to have a relationship with her father, separate from everything that happened between him and me. But truthfully, I felt something else too. A kind of closure. Marcus had finally faced consequences for his actions. The universe had balanced the scales in a way that felt just. I didn't need to carry anger anymore. Now, 5 years after that night in the kitchen when I asked for a divorce, I'm sitting in my gallery on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Emma is 15, thriving despite everything, already talking about college and art programs and what she wants to do with her life. She's fierce and independent and kind. Everything I hoped she'd be. The gallery has expanded to a second location. I've traveled to art shows around the world, discovered incredible new artists, built a career I'm genuinely proud of. I've even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it's nice to remember that I'm capable of connection, of attraction, of allowing someone to see me. Sometimes I look back on the woman I was at 26. Standing in that first gallery talking about controlled rage, and I want to reach through time and tell her, it's going to be hard, harder than you can imagine. You're going to lose yourself for a while. You're going to wonder if you're strong enough to survive. But you are. You're stronger than you know. The rage that Marcus saw in that painting all those years ago, he was right about it being dangerous because it was patient. But he made one crucial mistake. He thought he was describing the painting. He didn't realize he was describing me, describing what I'd become when pushed far enough, describing the quiet, controlled fury that would eventually dismantle everything he'd built on lies. I'd fought for myself. I'd fought for Emma. I'd survived, and then done more than survive. I'd rebuilt something real and true and mine. Was it worth it? The pain, the fear, the years of my life lost to someone who never deserved them in the first place? I honestly don't know. Some days I think yes, because I came out stronger. Some days I grieve for the girl I was, the easier path I might have taken if I'd been smarter or luckier or more careful. But this is the path I walked. These are the choices I made. And standing here in this gallery I built from nothing, surrounded by art that speaks to truth and transformation and the messy complexity of human experience, I can finally say, I'm at peace with it. I'm at peace with me. So let me ask you, was I wrong? For staying as long as I did? For fighting as hard as I did? For exposing his crimes even though it meant Emma's father went to prison? For choosing my own freedom over protecting his secrets? Should I have accepted his early settlement offers and walked away quietly? Should I have just been grateful for whatever he was willing to give me? Should I have put Emma's relationship with her father above everything else, even my own liberation? Or did I do the right thing, fighting for myself, demanding justice, refusing to be silenced or controlled or diminished any longer? I honestly don't know the answer. I only know what I chose and why I chose it, what I lived through and how I survived it. But I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my position? Do you think I made the right choices? Did I go too far or not far enough? Leave your thoughts in the comments below And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped or betrayed, or uncertain whether you had the strength to fight for yourself, please subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's build a community of people who understand that sometimes survival isn't just about making it through. Sometimes it's about refusing to accept anything less than the life you deserve. Tell me your story. Tell me your truth. Let's figure out together what courage really looks like.